There's been a lot going on and I don't feel like you've really been there. I get married and that didn't fix anything, child. I also felt like I had no personality. Like my personality was gone. Why don't you stay home and take care of that? Okay? My shame was at an all-time high. Now I was nothing. See, I was wondering why I hadn't cried yet. It was a mess. Like, how do I even start again? Like, this is embarrassing. God really did his big one. Not listening to him and not looking for him and not. If I could sit down and talk to my 22-year-old self, I would tell her, I'm a little nervous. This is a very vulnerable video. Like, sharing your testimony is a very personal thing. And for some time, I felt like it was something that I would eventually want to do, but I never felt ready. I never felt peace until now. And trying to figure out the direction in which my content is to go, I was prompted to my testimony to start with that. I'm just going to take a step of obedience and start with that because I know that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And I believe that our testimony is powerful regardless of where we are because we are never done. Your testimony, my testimony is now, and later on it will continue to be a testimony. But the point is, here we are. I'm going to share my testimony, and I was trying to think about how I want to do this, how much I wanted to share, because I want this to glorify God. The point isn't to just talk about me and to trauma dump and give a bunch of, I guess, irrelevant context or irrelevant details, but I also really want to give you enough context for you to understand who I am, who I was, what God took me out of. If you have ever felt ashamed, broken, empty, like you had no identity, like you were just too far gone, this video is for you. I want to show you how God's grace is so much bigger than any sin or any shame that you carry. I hope that my testimony can serve as an example of that. All right, so let's start with the basics of who am I? My name is Simonette and I am 32 years old, going on 33 in April. I am a Latina immigrant. I was born in Venezuela, but I have lived here the majority of my life. I speak both English and Spanish fluently. I am a retired makeup artist. I did professional bridal hair and makeup for quite some time, almost like 11, 12 years. I am a wife, a content creator, and most importantly, the daughter of the Most High King and a lover of Jesus Christ. That's just like the quick little spark notes of who I am. So I'm going to do my best to not bore you with irrelevant details, but we have to take it back to childhood and we have to provide some essential context, okay? I was born in Maracaibo, Venezuela. I came to the United States around the age of 2. So I came with my mother and my sister, who's about 11 and a half years older than me. I grew up in a typical Latino household with a strict Latina mother. She was a single mother and I had a sister who was like a second mother to me. My job was to get good grades in school and to do my chores, clean that house, and nothing else. Growing up, I never felt like I actually fit in. I always felt like the odd man out of all of the kids. Like I had some friends, but I don't know, I was also kind of bullied at the same time. Was I doing some of the bullying? I don't know. I don't remember. I remember my mom telling me stories of like, I'm laughing, but it's like, because it was kind of funny, some of the things that I said. But my mouth would get me in trouble, essentially. My mouth and my face would always get me in lots of trouble. And I always had like an RBF, a resting brat face. So yeah, I experienced a little bit of bullying, but I feel like a lot of us did. I had an absent father. The spark notes on that is that he had many children with many different women. He never showed any interest in being part of my life. My parents were married when they had me, but they got divorced very early on. He wanted nothing to do with me. He made that very, very clear. It took me a very long time, well into my adulthood, to come to terms with that and to kind of like, I don't know, all the pain of that was exposed very much later on in my life. But yeah, he was not there and he was not interested in being there. My mother and I never really had the best relationship. We clashed a lot. We were constantly like back and forth with each other. Our communication just wasn't there. And I mean, she was a great mother. She provided for me in so many ways. She was the reason that I even knew who Jesus was. But well, yeah, we just didn't have a great relationship. It was very toxic a lot of the times. And that's just a little bit of context of what my dynamic was like with my parents, because I feel like that is very formative and a very big deal. Another thing that really was shaping in my life is that when I was around 6-ish years old, I went through something that no child should ever have to go through by the hands of somebody that my family was supposed to trust. I won't get into much detail about that, but it really kind of just affected many areas of my life, and it affected the way that I saw myself, the way that I saw relationships, and it shaped me in more ways than I actually thought that it would, because at the time you don't really understand the repercussions and it starts to come out later. Also, from a very young age, I was very aware of my looks and my body, and I was often bullied for my looks. I would get bullied for my freckles, for my gap, for my hair. I was a little bit chubby. I would just get bullied about the way that I looked, and so insecurities started at a very young age, especially with my body. My body image became at the forefront of my mind from a super, super young age. And then of course, all of those insecurities led me to boys a lot earlier than I had any business worrying about boys and associating with boys and doing things with boys, okay? But hey, this is my testimony. It is what it is. Okay, so super important is the context of my faith during that time. And I would say that from the age of 6 to probably 18 years old, I consistently attended a Christian church. Went to kind of a mega church here in Miami. It was one of the biggest Hispanic Christian churches here, and I was pretty involved. I participated. I got baptized probably at 7 years old, and at the time I thought I knew what I was doing, and I thought that I understood the why, but later on I would realize I kind of didn't know. I was too young to kind of understand. Actually, I don't think I was too young to understand, because I know that there are children that get baptized around that age and they know why, but I don't think I grasped it fully. I saw Jesus and I understood Jesus as a ticket to heaven and a ticket to salvation, but the aspect of him being my Lord and having a relationship with him on earth I wasn't grasping that. I never really read my Bible. It was a book of rules. It was very intimidating. I had a very cute Precious Moments Bible, and one day I highlighted an entire page for fun, but I never really read it. I did attend Sunday school and I did attend the sermons and I listened. I feel I learned or retained a lot of it because I was a pretty smart kid. I paid attention a lot, but I also was kind of scared. I would pay attention a lot and listen, and it was more a fear, because I didn't want to go to hell. I didn't understand the fullness of what it is to have Jesus, and how amazing receiving his love here on earth really was. So then we get into my teenage years, and from the ages of 16 through 18, my life was uprooted very, very suddenly, very unexpectedly. We left the US, and in the span of 3 years, I lived in Venezuela, in Colombia, and in Panama. I had to leave everything that I knew. I literally lost all of my possessions. Mind you, I'm in 10th grade at this time, and I was out of school in the middle of the year. Nobody knew where I went. It was a lot, and it was very shocking, and I had to adapt very quickly and grow up very, very quickly. The last place that I lived in before coming back to the US was Panama. I actually really liked living there, and I went to a Christian school there. It was a Christian American school, so that was a really cool experience, and I was very involved again in the church because I was in a Christian school that was part of a Christian church, so I was surrounded by a lot of kids that also grew up in the church. I participated at the time, and I believed in Jesus. I can't really remember if I questioned the existence of Jesus or the concept of Jesus dying on the cross for me, but I didn't have a genuine or a deep rooted relationship with him. I didn't have that, but I just kind of went with the motions and participated and was part of it. So fast forward, I turned 18. When the school year is done in Panama, I was in 11th grade. I came back to the US by myself. I went to go live with my grandmother, so I wasn't alone, but I was kind of alone because I had to deal with everything on my own, register myself back to high school and just be an adult. I had to just straight up be an adult and be responsible and do things on my own. And something that really sucked and it really bothered me was that because of all of the moving that I did, I ended up having to graduate a year late from high school. So although I should have been done in school when I came back to the US, I had to go into 12th grade. All of my graduating class had already graduated, so that wasn't fun. And it's just like the cycle of hardships continued, but as the hardships continued, I just kept pressing on and I kept getting like stronger and stronger and more grown and more disciplined. I was developing a really hard exterior and I was like, I'm just going to be the strongest person in the world. I don't think I blamed God. I mean, I'm sure at some point I did, right? But I can't remember right now if I was like blaming or cursing God for the things that were happening, but I didn't really fully trust him. Like I would pray, I think, and like ask him to protect me, and like I would kind of like give him thanks, but I don't know about trusting him fully because I was like, I don't know. There's been a lot going on and I don't feel like you've really been there for me. You know, it's really a blur. So I'm not 1,000% sure how I felt about God at the time. But I know that it wasn't any type of deep-rooted faith or relationship. I can tell you that much. So that was like childhood, formative years. Now let's take it into college and like early adulthood. I would say from the age of 18 to 24, beginning of age 25, I was in college and I started going to church here again. I started going to the church that I grew up in, and I eventually just like stepped away and stopped going there for reasons that I can't exactly remember, but I just know like I just kind of stepped away. I was just like, I don't really need this maybe. And I just felt like I could just do life on my own. But yeah, for probably a couple of years, I went to church on and off. Again, not being a Christ follower, not living according to his word, but I was going. And I guess I was hopeful, but I eventually did step away. Believed in Jesus, but I also had questions. And I was questioning a lot. And I just felt like I had time to figure it out. Like I could just figure it out on my own. And at some point around this time, I also started to believe in and entertain some new age spirituality ideas like zodiac signs and manifestation, things that I was never really, I guess for lack of a better word, allowed to entertain because it was very like looked down upon in church, and I was just always told to stay away from that. And I was like, actually, this isn't like that bad. This looks really legit, makes a lot of sense. So I'm gonna believe in that. And I would take on the identity and like declare that I was a certain zodiac sign and just like, you know the whole new age manifestation vibe. Like I started believing in that. Not like super hardcore, but I was definitely entertaining it. So once I went into college, I worked full-time and I went to school full-time because I had to pay for school out of pocket with my own money. Another little piece of context is that I had always wanted to be a doctor. I was very serious about this. Like I was taking all the AP classes, all the dual enrollment classes my last year of high school, and was applying to like biology programs for college. And after some volunteering at a hospital, it just didn't feel right. And I was like, oh, this is not for me. I really wanted to be a OBGYN, but I always felt like I wanted to be a family woman first and be a wife first and have children. And I just didn't, my mind just changed. Okay. I knew that I still wanted to go to college and I still wanted to get my degree to kind of have that accomplishment for myself, to have it as a backup, and to also just, I guess, make my family proud. So I did go to college for public relations. I graduated in 2016, and throughout the entire time that I was in college, I was working full time. I worked like at blow dry bars, like blow drying hair. I worked as a professional makeup artist, and I worked at MAC Cosmetics for like 2 years throughout my college time. And that was a great experience, and I was like really finding myself and my identity as a makeup artist because I was pretty good at my job and I was feeling very cool girl and very accepted while I was doing these things. And also like around 2014, I became very interested in content creation. You know, like back when Instagram was kind of new and all the makeup girlies were posting tutorials and like getting really famous off of, you know who I'm talking about, like those makeup girlies, I became very interested in that and I was like aspiring to do that. I never stayed consistent because I didn't believe in myself, and because of a lot of the context that I already gave you, I had a lot of limiting beliefs about myself. I was very insecure. I had a lot of imposter syndrome, just a million and one reasons, a million and one excuses. So I tried my hand at content creation many times and it never kind of stuck, but I always like came back to it at some point. So let's see, I was a young girl in college. I was working full time, going to school full time, like I said. So I was getting my bills paid. I was getting good grades. I was doing a lot. I felt like a boss, and like that was my identity. Like I am that girl. But it was just like a facade because I was still very, very deeply insecure. But even though I was being responsible, I was still being like a normal young girl. I was partying, I was drinking, I was having casual relationship, hooking up, being not the purest, but you know, that's part of the story. I was really just looking for love in all of the wrong places. I had very little self-esteem, and the self-esteem that I did have was all attached to the way that I looked, to trying to be as hot and as sexy as possible, and to, yeah, I work, yeah, I go to school and I get good grades, and like just what I did and what I looked like, that was where all of my worth and my identity came from. I think the more that I placed my worth and my identity in those things, the further and further I felt from God, and the less I felt like I needed him. So now we're getting into adulthood, probably ages 25 through like 31. I was a successful makeup artist and I was able to provide for myself. I was able to live alone, pay my own bills, kind of just do my thing. I didn't need anybody. I didn't need a man. Like I took a lot of pride in being able to, I mean, I wasn't like making like a lot of money, but I was able to sustain myself and live somewhat comfortably. It was just really, I felt very accomplished and very proud of myself. I still had Jesus, you know, God in the back of my mind, very, very, very in the back. That just my entire identity continued to revolve around the things that I've, been mentioning. In late 2017, like early 2018, I get into a relationship with my now husband, and we were both pretty young. We had a lot of growing to do. We were long distance for about the first 2 years, and then when 2020 came and the world shut down, we started living together, cohabitating before marriage. And I always grew up knowing that that was wrong, or being told that's wrong, you shouldn't live with a man that's not your husband, but I did what I wanted to. But I had that in the back of my mind. Like I had a lot of the things that I learned in the church and through my mother always just there. But I did it anyways. I did what I wanted to do. And for the most part, our relationship was like good. There wasn't any toxicity where we were like super harmful to each other, but emotionally there was a lot of toxicity, especially on my end, because a lot of the learned behaviors and a lot of the trauma started like coming out, and I wasn't that nice. I wasn't that nice, and he was very patient. And I mean, we both had things to grow on, but the love that I thought I was looking for in a man was still not satisfying me. It was still not fulfilling the void. The hole that I had in my heart was God-sized, and no man could fill that hole. And so I was very just angry, offended, defensive. It was a difficult time, and I felt very confused as to why I have this man that I love and I'm still not like happy. Why am I still not satisfied? Why is something still missing? Also, really important context is that through most of my adult life, my weight has fluctuated a lot, very up and down and kind of all over the place, but I consistently started going up and up and up and up. Like I was healthy, I was not in a good place. I did not feel like myself. I did not feel like I looked like myself. And I'm still not like back to how I used to be. Don't know if I ever will, but I am like at a healthier point now. But it was bad, and it really took a toll and threw a wrench into my self-esteem that already was in a very fragile place. And why did I gain the weight, you ask? Well, I'm sure part of it was lack of discipline. I was doing a lot of eating, a lot of sitting that I wasn't accustomed to doing. And then I do know that a really big part of it though was just a very broken nervous system and trauma that was just like bursting at the seams, and my body just did not feel safe. And it took me a really long time to understand that, because for a very long time, this topic brought me a lot of shame, and I thought that it was all my fault and that I was broken and that's like a whole separate video, a whole separate testimony. But that was also something that was like happening in the background throughout all of my adulthood. But one thing about me is that I was not gonna give up. Listen, I may stop things for a while, but I do not give up forever. So I tried my hand again at content creation, and this time it stuck. This was like around 2021, and I really started to see success, especially on TikTok, a little bit on Instagram, but mostly on TikTok. That was my biggest platform. It was great. I was giving a lot of like makeup education and just sharing a lot of value of myself as like a makeup artist and giving makeup tips. It was very short-lived because, and by short-lived I mean like a year or so, a couple years, because it just wasn't fulfilling me. I was getting the things that I wanted. I was getting brand deals. I was getting invited to events, like all of these things that I had wanted for such a long time. I was getting them and it wasn't satisfying me. All I kept thinking about was the next milestone and the next milestone. And I was literally like, all I could think about was the content and making something out of myself and proving to myself that I could do it. At this point with my faith, I still believed in Jesus. I don't think I ever like just completely stopped believing in who Jesus was. I mean, I definitely had questions. I definitely questioned, but I don't think I ever like full on was like, no, I don't believe in him at all. Like, I don't think so. I just was not following him at all. I was not anywhere near a disciple or anywhere near having a relationship with him. And at this time, I was still very much in bed with New Age beliefs. I wouldn't say a lot of practices or like intense or deep practices, but I had a lot of beliefs again. So like the zodiac signs, the manifestation, like creating the vision boards to manifest, the mantras, the affirmations, a lot of the things that seemed harmless because they were not really like occult or dark, but they were not of God. Like they did not involve God. They involved myself in making myself my own God. And as you can tell by the progression of the story, I was very quickly like becoming my own God, and my identity was all based on myself and what I could do and what I could produce. So things started to decline, like my excitement and my passion for content, my excitement and my love for my craft of makeup artistry, it started to decline. And then come like 2023, I get married, and that didn't fix anything, child. I was like, you know, when I get married, like not be living in sin anymore, and I will just like be a wife finally. And I just felt like it would fix something. Being a wife and a mother has always been like such a goal for me and such a desire. And I thought that it would like help something, and it didn't at all. Like I love my husband, but he was never meant to fill that void. And he was never meant to take the space of God, never meant to take the space of Jesus. So yeah, that didn't help very much. If anything, things started to kind of spiral downward even more. I also felt like I had no personality. Like my personality was gone. I felt like I wasn't even funny anymore. Like I just had nothing to say. I didn't know who I was. I was a mess. I was a shell of myself. That's the best way that I can describe it. I was completely hollow on the inside. And you know what? I could not explain why I felt the way that I felt and why I felt just so empty and so broken. And I was really ashamed of my feelings. I felt like I was being ungrateful, and I didn't just want to blame it on trauma. I just like didn't know how to explain it. I couldn't understand what was happening, why it was happening, where did my strength go? And then that was like another really big thing. Like I'm supposed to be strong. I'm supposed to be like this. Like where is that? But it was all really like in here and in here, because my circumstances, even though I still encountered hardships, my circumstances were not very all over the place at that time. Like I had a pretty stable life. So it was really my heart and my mind. And I couldn't explain it to anybody, and nobody understood. Well, they probably didn't understand because I couldn't explain it. But you know, like I did feel some judgment because so around 2024, a little bit after my 31st birthday, I quit doing makeup. I stopped taking clients. My husband was supportive of this. He saw just how much I was declining mentally, physically, just in every aspect. And he was like, why don't you stay home and take care of that? Okay? It might be a little hard for us, but I want you to be okay. So thank the Lord for that man. That sure didn't fix anything. Like my shame was at an all-time high. My lack of identity was at an all-time high. My feelings of purposelessness were at an all-time high, because now I couldn't even say that I worked or that I made money or that I was a makeup artist or that I was anything. Like I couldn't have I didn't have an identity. Like, who am I? I went from being in literal survival mode so many years, being a boss girl, and now I was nothing. I felt like even as a wife, I had nothing to offer because I was in just such a confused and dark place. And then I was very down on myself about the way that I looked and the weight that I gained. So I just felt like I had nothing going for me. So I spiraled into a very deep and sad depression. And I was like paralyzed. I would want to create content. I would want to do things. And I just felt so completely numbed and so completely just paralyzed. I didn't feel safe in my body. My body wasn't letting me lose weight. I was like, I can't even do that. I have the time to do it and I can't even do that. I felt judgment from people because I wasn't working, because nobody understood the why, because I never talked about how I felt. I never told or opened up to anybody about what was really happening. The only one that sort of knew and that I sort of opened up to. See, I was wondering why I hadn't cried yet. The only one that I've opened up to about this was my husband. Of course, you're not going to understand. And like, why am I going to try to explain it to you if you're just going to judge me anyways? I still not understand. Especially when you're trying to explain it to Gen X and to boomers. They're just like, for sure not going to understand. And they didn't. I was right. They didn't. So I was just like, I felt like I couldn't tell anybody. Like, nobody was gonna understand me. And then like my husband could only understand me so much because he's a man. Like, what is a man gonna understand about like a woman's brain? Like, it's not that men don't go through stuff, but they go through things differently and they process them differently. He like understood, but like as much as he possibly could. I also felt like such a failure when it came to content because I grew these platforms all of a sudden, and then now I just was like stuck. I had the time to create the content because I quit taking clients, but it just wasn't coming out. And I knew that it wasn't the end because I felt like in the back of my mind, it was like I knew God had something for me with it, but it couldn't be in the same way that I was doing it. But I just felt so stuck. I kept trying and I kept trying to show up and nothing was sticking, nothing was working. I had the time, but I did not have the will. Transparently, the will was just not there. And like every day was a blur, and I was just like constantly scrolling, constantly comparing myself, like a mess. Okay, so like in mid 2024, I started going to church again. Not super consistently. I was not fully invested, but I was like trying. I was seeking. I knew that Jesus was the answer. I knew that he was. I just knew it. I just felt it. I knew it, and I was like, let me try. But like I couldn't fully invest myself because I felt so ashamed for walking away. I felt my sin was just too big. My shame was too big. And I was just like, I don't know if he'll like receive me. I don't know if I'm worthy of this. I don't know. Like, how do I even start again? Like, this is embarrassing. But even though I felt unworthy, I did start to like invite God and like pray a little bit and like start inviting him back in and like saying like, hey, it's me. What's up? And all he needs is an invitation. So he like started to work very slowly, very tenderly, very softly, but he started to work in my heart. Couldn't really see it then, but now hindsight sees 2020. I can see how he was just like, okay, that's all I needed. All I needed was like yes, or like come in, or like let's try this. He started to do a little bit of a work in me. So late 2024, early 2025, I started renouncing new age beliefs and started just pursuing Jesus 100%. I was still felt like I was in the doghouse, and I still felt again those feelings of unworthiness and of shame, but I was trying. I was like inching a little bit more every single day. I was basically like a prodigal daughter. I don't know if you know the story of the prodigal son in the Bible, but it's basically like the son who asked his father for his inheritance early and felt like he didn't need to be there. I'm paraphrasing. He left, he blew all of his money, he did whatever he wanted, and then he came back with like his tail tucked between his legs, and his father was waiting for him and with open arms. So I felt like the prodigal daughter. I was still very much broken. I was still very much ashamed and felt unworthy, but I was just kind of holding on like the hem of his garment and was just trying to get the little bit that I thought I could possibly get because I felt like I didn't deserve much. So I started praying a little bit more. I started reading my Bible a little bit more, trying to learn how to study the Bible a bit. I had only read my Bible like a handful of times in my life. At that point, I knew many verses and many teachings, but I had never like read the Bible for myself very much. So I started trying to get into that, watching sermons, watching podcasts, trying to like learn how to kind of study and understand and read the Bible. It was like a very slow process continuous and it wasn't the most consistent, but whenever I showed up, God would show up right there, like showing me and teaching me and like working in my heart. So I slowly began to like understand what it was like to have a relationship with him, and just the fact that he wanted to have a relationship with me, and that what it's like to live with him, what it's like to live for him. What's really interesting is that my circumstances were not changing, but my heart was changing. Just like before, my circumstances were not necessarily changing for the negative, but my heart was declining and I was breaking more and more. In the same way, my circumstances weren't really improving or declining, but my heart was being transformed. So it was really just about the heart and the mind, not only about what I was actually living in that time. And that's why the enemy is just such a liar. Like, he will literally fill your mind with so many lies. You can have a blessed life, you can have so many circumstances, and he will skew your view, and he will skew the way that you see things, and you will be drowning in a glass of water. He will do anything to get your eyes off of the truth. But anyways, I digress. So my heart was changing, and I started to feel like I was coming alive again. Like, I was starting to gain some sense of purpose and identity. And this was foreign to me because I was gaining this purpose and this identity just through what God said about me, what I saw that the Bible said about me. And this was really, like I said, new to me, and it was really special to me, but it was something that I had never experienced before with Jesus. And late 2024, as I began to change a bit, and you can start seeing that change in me, just the way that I talked and just my attitude. Also started sharing my faith a little bit, and I tried to sort of start like sharing it with my friends, and I lost a good amount of friends. People that I thought were real friends and that I thought were going to be in my life for a while, they stopped being my friends. Almost like felt it coming for a few months. And I remember that I was asking God for godly friendships and to just align me with the right people, and he removed those people out of my life to make room for new people, because come like not end of 2024, beginning of 2025, he started introducing me to godly community, to women that love the Lord and were like just on the same mission. So it was just really beautiful how I asked for that, and he provided what I thought he took away from me that hurt me and that was just going to devastate me. It ended up being like the best thing that could have happened, losing those friends, if you could call them that, because let's not get into that. But like, I'm just very grateful. So I cannot pinpoint exactly when this happened. It did not happen overnight, but I just remember like over time, shame started to fall off of me. Insecurity started to fall off of me. My identity started to grow. My calling and like purpose started to grow. And it was still very like fuzzy what that was, but I knew that there was something there. Only God could do it. Very supernatural. And all it took was like an invitation and giving God my yes. The closer that I got to Jesus, the more hope for my life I felt, and my heart and my mind were being transformed by the day. And to this day, they are still being transformed, and the work will never be done. I will not be complete until heaven. It has been a journey. God really did his big one on me, and he brought me out of a place that I couldn't imagine myself getting out of. I truly do not recognize the person that I once was. I am proof that God is a restorer and he is a redeemer. The story that he is writing for us is so much better than the story we could write for ourselves. I am proof that it does not matter how many times you fall or for how long you fall. He is such a loving father that waits for you with open arms. If I could sit down and talk to my 22-year-old self, I would tell her, you are already loved, you are already chosen, and you are already enough. And God is your father, and Jesus just wants your heart. I realized that my worth and my identity is inherent in me being created in the image of God and who he says that I am. And it was never anything that I could earn. There was nothing that I could ever do to receive that identity, to receive that love. And I will say that looking back at my life, I saw God's hand on my life in his protection and his mercy and his grace over my life. All of the mistakes that I made and all the things that I should not have made it through and that I had no business doing, he still protected me through all of it. All the things that should have gone very awry, I was being divinely protected by my father, even though I was not listening to him and not looking for him and not. For a very long time, even before I came to place that I am now. Years ago, I always felt like I had a purpose in helping women, and I just didn't know what that would look like. I felt like, I know that I've gone through so many things in my life, and I feel like they will it won't be in vain. The things that I have gone through will one day help other women. And again, I did not know what that would look like, but I do remember when I was in college, I remember I was walking to another class, or like, I don't know, I was walking on campus, and I remember having almost like this vision in my head, standing in front of a group of women and talking to them. And I had like no context, but it's something that I've never forgotten. And I just never knew what it would look like, but I just filed it in the back of my head. And I think God was just planting something in my heart. I feel like it was just a way of God sort of communicating something to me that I would need later. So I am at a place right now where God is maturing me as a woman. He's growing my marriage, and he's growing my faith, and restoring and growing my relationships. And he is also preparing me for the next step of my life, which is motherhood. I am seeking him more and more each day, and I am trying my best to walk in obedience and in purpose. I am far from perfect, never will be perfect, but I just want more of him. I just want to seek him, and I just want to continue to grow and advance his kingdom and be the woman that he designed me to be. The woman that I never thought that I could have been, and the woman I would have never been able to be in my own strength. Right now, I'm trying to steward my platforms and create content for his glory, and I started a women's Bible study that I host once a week via Zoom. That's something that I was very scared to do, and imposter syndrome had me like, no girl, you cannot do it. And for all the reasons that you just heard, I thought that I was very unqualified and very unworthy, but as we know, he does not call the qualified, he qualifies the call. So I have been doing that, and I have just been attending a local church and volunteering and serving the community. My life is not perfect at all, just like no one's life will ever be, but I am so excited for life and so expectant in what he's doing and will continue to do in my life. I no longer live in a cycle of shame, and my identity as a daughter of the Most High is being strengthened more and more every single day. And I am just so grateful. Jesus freed me from anger, from depression, from anxiety, from lust. He freed me from very deep wounds of abandonment and loss of identity. He literally saved my life. So if you are watching this and you feel like you are too broken, too sinful, too shameful, too disqualified, I need you to listen to me. You are not too far gone for Jesus, nor will you ever be. Ever. I want you to please understand that. I want you to believe it. You will never be too far gone. There is nothing that you can do that will separate you from the love of God. For a really long time, I thought that I had to clean myself up first to be worthy of coming to Jesus, to be less sinful, less shameful, less broken, less messy. You don't clean yourself up first before getting into the shower. You don't make yourself well first before going to the doctor. He is the doctor. He is the one that cleanses you. All he wants is an invitation. When you feel like he's going to meet you with condemnation, I have to tell you that he is not. He is going to meet you with so much love and with so much open arms, and he's waiting for you right now. Right now. Jesus is not afraid of your past. He's not intimidated by your trauma. He's not shocked by your sin. He knows it all. He was there from the beginning. He's been there the entire time, just watching, just waiting. Jesus is a redeemer. He is a restorer, and he is still in the business of mending hearts and restoring lives. If you don't know where to start, all you need to do is just like close your eyes, and wherever you are, if you're in your car, in your room, at work, wherever you're watching, just say, Jesus, if you're real, show me. I need you. And he will show up for you. You are already fully loved, fully chosen, fully accepted, fully seen. I hope that this video will bless someone, that my testimony could give somebody hope, and that you can see through the example of my life that if he could do it for me, he can do it for you. Honestly, I am so surprised that I barely cried. I am such a crybaby, and the Holy Spirit was just helping me get my words out. I was so nervous to do this. I just really hope that this video helps somebody, that it resonates with somebody. I wanted you to have some context and some idea of who I am, not for my own glory, but for the glory of God. And also because as I continue this journey of creating content that is meant to glorify the Lord, I want you to kind of know who it is that you would be following, where all of the context and like all that I've learned is coming from. If this testimony blessed you in any way, if you have anything to share, just let me know in the comments. And I am so looking forward to continuing the advancement of the kingdom of God. And I just pray that if you do not know Jesus, that you know him, that you encounter him. I pray that if you are like me and you are like a prodigal daughter, I pray that you know that he is just waiting for you to come back. It does not matter how far gone you think you are not. I love you so much. Jesus loves you so much, and I will see you in my next video.